live. We're back. This is the 𝗕𝗶𝗸𝗲 podcast, and I have a special guest today. 𝗪𝗵𝘁'𝘀 is joining us from Texas.
I am Austin, Texas.
Prepared for Hurricane Irene. Marco?
I'm not dealing with California wildfires
Laura?
in Texas, so yeah. I don't remember. It's Laura.
Laura, Marco.
Yeah,
Mike,
Marco.
Nick.
Maybe one. They're kind of making twins and deciding to come together, maybe. So.
Yeah, interesting time. I'm in podcasting headquarters in Naples, Florida, and I can't even tell you how lucky I feel. One is I'm avoiding my second hurricane, so they're just like skirting around me. I don't know, did I brush my teeth? I don't know. And I also feel very lucky because Mike reached out to me. We're always talking, but we had the This Week in Coverage interview with 𝗓𝗲𝗯, the CEO of Hippo, and Mike came up with like a Roman candle of an idea where he said, we should do a recording where we can discuss what it's like to be one of the first insurance professionals in a tech company and what that was like. And I was like, yes, we absolutely must. So Mike, that was a brilliant idea. Thank you so much.
Oh, of course, man. Of course.
So for those of you that haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I walked away very impressed, and I think we're going to talk about a lot of the details of Hippo, but this isn't necessarily a Hippo interview. So
Sure.
Yes, 𝗪𝗁𝘁 works for Hippo. He's an insurance professional that's there, but this isn't a Hippo thing. This is more about how insurance professionals and tech professionals can engage so we can collectively move together. So Mike, I'm going to have you rewind the tape. First, give a brief introduction. Before Hippo, who was 𝗪𝗁𝘁?
Oh, man. First lesson of working at a startup for 4 years. I don't remember who 𝗪𝗁𝘁 is prior to Hippo, man. It's kind of how it feels sometimes.
Weeks blend together, years blend together.
The years blend together at this point. Now, like you said, man, I am I consider myself an insurance guy, right? One of those people who never knew the first thing about insurance, never had any desire to get into insurance. I left school, moved to Atlanta, was working in Atlanta at a furniture delivery place, and ended up renting a car from Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And that is actually where my insurance career started. It was somebody who was like, hey, you should come work for Enterprise. It's a great place to get a company start and get good background and training experience. And I lasted about 6 months in their rental management division, and then quickly migrated over to their insurance services team. Spent about 3.5 years working in insurance services with them in the Southeast. Got to do some catastrophe management on Hurricane Katrina and vehicle recovery, and it just became interesting. It was kind of like, gosh, I never thought I would enjoy working on auto insurance policies and working with customers in that space. But, like anything else in insurance, when catastrophes happen and you get to see what insurance truly is meant to do,
yep.
you see insurance in a whole different light, right? And had an opportunity, met somebody at Nationwide Mutual Insurance, ended up moving over into their claims team, worked on total loss and auto claims, which is just a miserable job in the sense of, it's sad, right? I mean, you're talking total losses. So it's one day you're arguing with somebody about their 1984 Honda Civic that they think is in excellent condition. And then the next day after that, you're working a fatality claim where unfortunately somebody lost their life, and you really, get stuck in those moments. Had an opportunity to jump into underwriting very quickly after I joined Nationwide, and I've been in underwriting ever since. So I did, mainly on the property space. I've done catastrophe management, portfolio management, auto, home underwriting. Then I moved out west to work for Allstate and Esurance and launched their homeowners program for a few years and built that out. And then one day I got this random email from this Israeli guy named 𝗓𝗲𝗯 who wanted me to come over to the Bay Area and learn about this company, Hippo, that he was starting, that turned out to be, the greatest decision I've ever made on something that I thought was going to be a complete waste of an afternoon.
Okay, so before we jump into Hippo, how much did the claims experience that you acquired across your various entities help you with underwriting?
So it's everything. The experience I got from claims is everything I ever got for insurance. And I say that, Nick, in the sense that one of the first responsibilities I had in claims was to read an insurance contract, right? It was the very first piece of training, was you got to know the contract. If you're going to pay claims, you got to understand what the contract is. And that was where I really understood kind of the legal entity and the legal side of all the different case law and all the different arguments going back a ridiculous amount of time, and what actually drives insurance. And I realized that everything I ever thought about insurance and why claims got approved or denied or why people even had insurance in the first place, I knew nothing about. And it became interesting. And I started to learn a little bit more. And then when you actually deal with claims and understand at the end of the day where insurance, comes into play, it really hits you, it really hits you hard when you understand it at that level. Even from the deniability, right? I mean, a lot of times you see companies that have great NPS scores and everything else on the support side is because they know how to explain the insurance process to a customer. Not everything is covered. It's a contract. It's not always the insurance company's decision on what's going to get paid and what's not going to get paid. It's the contract that will make that decision in a lot of cases. And the more, like the deeper I went into that on the claim side, just made underwriting so much easier because I was able to assess the risk based on what the actual risks are, depending on what it is, right? Yep. Whether it's an auto policy, an umbrella policy, a coastal, a house that's second row from the beach versus a house that's in the middle of upstate New York, right? It's a totally different thing, but you have to be able to think about insurance, and you need to be able to think about underwriting, claims, and the consumer experience across the entire United States, which to me is different than any other place in the world, because here we deal with every type of catastrophe that there is pretty much on the planet, right? Whether it's a volcanic eruption, a sinkhole, a hurricane, a flood, tornadoes, hail, doesn't really matter. The US has pretty much every type of catastrophe there is to offer. It impacts every avenue and every piece of insurance that there is. And it's I'm an insurance nerd, right? I listen to all these different vlogs. I read all these different things. I love what I do. And because insurance is a very important thing, and a lot of people need it, and they don't realize how bad until, catastrophe strikes.
So that question was leading the witness, because we're going to jump into Hippo now. And my sense is that I'm going to go into the interview piece. I'm really interested what that was like. But my sense is that those experiences have translated. Like what I see from Hippo seems like an insurance product that I think cares about the customer is the wrong phrase. It's customer centric, and there's touch points there where you understand that ultimately your product is the claims paying, but you have other opportunities ahead of time where you can avoid the conflicts that can occur at claims time. And I think that's a weakness in the, I think most product design is done from an underwriting standpoint. And I think it loses some of its human and customer effect when it's not done with the claims in mind. I almost think you have to start with the claims and work backwards. Like, what is it that we're trying to do? And then work backwards to almost get there. And if you read a traditional insurance policy, it's very confusing because it's written by underwriters and lawyers. And so it almost inevitably creates claims conflict. So before we get into the interview, which I'm dying to find out what that was like, can you link claims helps you become a better underwriter? How do those experiences help you become a better product developer in creating that overall customer solution that exists at Hippo?
Yeah, I'll tell you very simply, right? It's a customer. It's not a policyholder. You'll hear Asaf say this. He may have even said it on, your interview with him, right? We have customers. They are a customer of Hippo. We are there to serve our customer to the best of our ability, right? There's contract limitations. There's things that we're legally not able to pay, right? There's things that the Department of Insurance is going to mandate and make sure that we cover. COVID-19 is a great example. All the different moratoriums that have been going on with payment cancellations and all the different things that we've had to do as an industry to help consumers. For us, it's the customer experience. We want to try to find ways to make sure that we're there to help our customers. And understanding the claims process and having empathetic claims people to make sure that when it ultimately gets to that point, that we're there to help them. We try to be as proactive as we can, Nick, right? And making sure that we're preventing loss. That's a big value proposition. And I'm not going to sit here and try and sell this as just, this is a value add of Hippo. I mean, obviously it is. This is what we try to do. We try to be a proactive, modernized home insurer. But the ultimate goal there is to create a customer-focused experience so that when they do get to a claim, we do everything we can to make sure that they're covered. If they're not, we're going to go and do everything that we can to make sure they understand why. You know, what is the reasoning? What is the coverage limitation? And this is why we've built, from an underwriting aspect, a contract that includes additional endorsed coverages, right? They're not base package coverages always. A lot of times it's endorsements and things that we have to add. But we try to provide a policy that actually offers the coverages that we feel that people need to protect themselves to the best, you know, that they can right out of the gate. Not a slimmed down, stripped down, we just want to have a, you know, we just want to sell the business and we don't care about the coverage and we'll deny the claims. That's not an experience that anybody wants to provide. And that's, you know, unfortunately, the reason why our industry has gotten, you know, a bad name in a lot of instances, because those things have happened in the past. But consumer experience has changed dramatically over the last 10 years, and it's going to continue. People actually read the fine print. They pay attention to things more now than they ever used to. So the customer experience piece for me is the most important part. And that goes all the way down to the underwriter, right? If I'm making a decision on somebody's home, I shouldn't necessarily just cancel somebody because they have dry rot on their fascia boards, which when I went through training years ago, it was like, if it's a hazard, it's a hazard. So they always said, take action on hazards, and that's it. But why, right? If I have somebody who's a very good customer, they've owned a house for 30 years, and that dry rot's been there for 20 and they've never filed a claim, why is that a bad risk, right? You have to think with the customer in mind first, not the insurance policy in mind first. You assess the risk, you assess the customer, and you find ways to create an option for them to cover themselves. And we've done that very, very well throughout the history of HIPAA over the last 4 years.
Yeah. So there's the inevitable, you know, plus you have to avoid the moral hazard and adverse selection. So
Yep.
You're walking a tightrope. So you want to be extremely customer centric, but there are customers out there that aren't going to reciprocate. They don't
Sure.
view themselves as customers of you. And so it's a delicate balancing act, right? And so I think I loved your answer. You asked why. I don't think we do enough of that. I don't think there's like even something as simple as why does a deductible exist? I think most insurance professionals can answer that, but it's like, no, but why? Why does it exist? Like, go back in time. Why does co-insurance exist? Go back in time. And we've had now, 100+ years of this conflict between insurers trying to prevent the wrong customers from getting in, even if they have the best of intentions. And so talk about that a little bit too. Like how do you think about the fraud piece, getting the wrong customer? You want to service them, but what if you're servicing the wrong customer?
Yeah, if you think about it from a relationship standpoint, right? Like, would you want to be friends with somebody who doesn't necessarily want to be friends with you, right? You don't just go out and make friends. You meet people, you understand what their likes are, what their dislikes are. When we talk about consumer experience and how we create relationships with our customers, right? I'm looking at it as an underwriter, and I'm using data and all of these different things behind the scenes to try and make that assessment, right? A great example, our smart home strategy, right? We've invested a ton of time and money into smart home. We're not getting a ton of data back right yet on exactly what the long-term impact is, but I'm creating a point with this customer that is getting them to invest in protecting their house, right? Regardless of whether or not it stops the claim, prevents the claim, makes the claim severity $5,000 instead of $10,000. Take all of that stuff and just completely take that away. That's not the focus. The focus right now is, how do I make consumers interested in actually protecting their property, right? That's kind of the first piece from an underwriting aspect. And from there, you start to add on all the different data elements, all the different consumer interaction points, all the different things that people do, and you can start to build this kind of somewhat of a picture of what this customer is going to be like, right? What is the long-term relationship that we're going to create here as a proactive insurer to help people, buy into this? And then on the flip side, you're very easily and very quickly from an underwriting end able to identify more customers who don't fit that mold, right, Nick? That's where you start to go down that path of like, you start to see these different things of like, well, why isn't this person interested in protecting their house? Why do they not want to be in this? You start to ask the right questions of understanding of, This is a risk for Hippo. This is a risk that's going to impact the rest of my book of business. who want to be profitable customers and use insurance for what it's intended there for. A catastrophic loss that they can't afford to make themselves whole from. That's the intent. And this goes back, obviously, you made the great point of understanding where insurance started, how we've gotten to where we've gotten to now. What is the intent? What is the point? If we can try to prevent the claim and try and prevent the insurance policy itself, the policy coverage from being needed, how do you help the customer invest in this ginormous asset that they've made, this huge purchase that's going to be one of the biggest in their life? I always use auto as my analogy because I've worked auto claims and I've worked, in that space for a long time, and now property for a very long time as well. People think about their car like it's this great asset. They wash it all the time. They get the oil changed. They rotate their tires. They get their brakes checked. They do all these different things to the item that they spend $10,000 on that they're going to have for 3 years. And the house that they spend $500,000 on that they're going to have for 30 years, they don't ever want to do anything to it, right? That's not a blame against the customer. The blame is against the industry, the home insurance industry, the home builder space, all of these different things. We've never built that mental, you need to do this. You need to have home maintenance. Should you buy a warranty on your house? Should you buy a package that comes out and does home inspections on your house? All of these different things that you'll hear Hippo talk about all the time is in the effort of making sure that the customer has a vested interest in protecting their own assets.
Yep.
That in turn will lead to less losses, a better result for Hippo, not just because obviously, do we want to be a profitable insurer? Of course, that's the whole point. Every insurance company wants to be profitable. But I want to do it in a way that is working with our customers, that's partnering with our customers, that's using our claims organization and our service and support organization, and all of these front-end initiatives that we do to make sure that we're at least doing the best we can to make sure that we're helping these customers avoid loss at the end of the day.
I think the entire business model revolves around alignment of interests.
Yep, exactly, 100%.
That's it. And I think we have gotten so far away from that. And it's for both the insurer and the property owner, neither one of them wants a claim. Neither one of them wants a loss. So there's an alignment of interest there. But you can't have, the policyholder can't be thinking that I went several years without a claim and I wasted my money. Like there needs to be a connection of dots saying, well, there's a financial benefit from this, and this is sort of an investment, and it's hard to do with the product. So let's tiptoe into what technology can do, what Hippo's doing, what others are doing as well, changing that dynamic where it's not, where the customer doesn't feel as though they're wasting their money because they went a year without a claim.
Yeah.
It's sort of what they wanted, but okay. So this Israeli gentleman reaches out to you and asks you to come in. You walk in. What are you thinking?
So I'll take it even a step further back, right? Asaf and I's original connection was through LinkedIn. I get a random LinkedIn invite.
So you met online.
Yep, online, right? And no idea what this is. The only thing that there was about hippo.com or myhippo.com at the time when I looked it up, when I got his invite, was a giant green screen that said, what's like 47,000 times bigger than a gecko, a hippo. And that was it. And I thought it was the corniest thing ever, but Asaf is a persistent guy. We finally connected. We got on the phone. I'm not kidding you, Nick. We were on the phone for a minute and a half. And Asaf was like, look, I just want you to take a day off. You live in Sacramento. I was living in Sacramento at the time. He's like, come over to the Bay. Let's have a cup of coffee and just have a quick chat. So I finally, caved in after a couple of weeks of back and forth, picked a day, went out there. I walk into this tiny office on Castro Street in Mountain View above a tortilla restaurant that it's just the total cliche of like startup, man. It's like the attic of a restaurant, a 900 square foot thing with just 2 desks, 2 tables with a bunch of monitors. I walk in, there's one person there speaking Hebrew.
Are you rolling your eyes?
Oh, I was like, I didn't know what I was getting into, but
okay.
I've always been one of those people, I've lived all over the US. I've always, my wife and I have always bounced around. We've always been open to change. So I was like, what do you got to lose, right? It was a time where, even back then at Allstate, at 𝗓𝗄rance, the writing of what just happened with 𝗓𝗄rance was kind of already on the wall. Steve Leckis, who was a mentor of mine, had left 𝗓𝗄rance and went on to Verisk, and now he's on to Branch and other stuff. So, you know, you knew that things were going to change. The defining moment for me, honestly, was about 30 seconds before I met Asaf. Somebody walked into the office, and I was like, hey, I'm supposed to meet with Asaf. He was supposed to be here 15 minutes ago. And I was already mad that he was late. I'm like, I can't believe this. And he's like, oh, we just got a call that this furniture that we had ordered for the office is in, and it was up the street. And he's like, Asaf went to pick it up with a couple of the guys. And 30 seconds later, Asaf and two of our product guys, one engineer and one product guy, walk in carrying their own furniture. Like, Asaf walked up the street with two other guys from the office to pick up this new couch and something else that they had gotten for the team to actually have something to sit on in the office. And he was carrying it down Castro Street. And across the street, I'm looking out the window, and he comes into the office and is like, oh, are you Mike? So sorry I'm late. And like drops this couch in front of me and was like, come on back.
Have a seat.
I mean, it was just crazy to think. I'm like, wow, this guy's the CEO of a company. And I had looked into Asaf, like, he's a successful entrepreneur. He's had previous companies that were, you know, that were very successful. The fact that he was like that was just, one, it was unbelievable that, like, he was there with the guys and was going to pick up his own stuff, didn't pay somebody to do it. Like, the little things in my mind kind of clicked. It's like, this is a brand new startup. He could be one of those CEOs that just pays somebody to do it and buys this expensive furniture, crazy stuff, and just didn't. And we met that afternoon, and we were supposed to meet for an hour, and I ended up spending 5.5 hours with him, 𝗂𝗶𝗸𝗲, our chief product officer, Eyal Navon, who was one of the co-founders of Hippo. And we just whiteboarded this vision of what home insurance could look like. And, you know, I'm not exaggerating this at all. If I could have taken a picture of the whiteboard that Asaf put up in front of me 4 years ago next month, it's uncanny how much we've stayed on the vision. Right. And when you talk about the key pivotal moments and different things, yes, things have changed. So many different things have changed. You know, and you and 𝗕𝗵𝗁𝗵 hit us off with this on your podcast with him, and he talked about those different inflection points of where we've made pivots. But the vision and the strategy that Asaf has always had is that the customer needs to come first. We have to find a way to create a relationship with the customer, and never that home insurance is broken or that we're going to do all this disruption and all these different things. You never hear Hippo talk about disruption, right? We talk about modernization. Asaf has always had this uncanny ability to try and create relationships. And it was never going to be abrasive. It was never going to be an us against them or they're our competitor. We always look at everything of how can we work with this other company? How can we benefit from them? How can they benefit from us? How does it help the customer? And we spent 5 hours that day talking through all of these different things. And the biggest piece for me, obviously, was on the insurance side, right? I was an underwriter. I was terrified of everything that he was talking about because I'm like, no, we can't do this. We can't do that. This is illegal. You can't say these things. and then, you know, we talked through it, and Asaf was like, look, I'm hiring the insurance people because I need the insurance knowledge. So I'm going to tell you what I want to do, and then I need you to tell us how we can do it. And then, you know, shortly after I joined, 𝗵𝗵𝘁, who's our chief insurance officer, joined the company. And then Angela Grant, who was our former head of compliance, joined. And Asaf was really, really, really smart in knowing that technology was going to drive the back end of what we were going to do. But insurance knowledge was going to drive how we were going to do it the right way. And setting up from a very, very early stage, square one, no policies. Compliance is going to be key. Asaf always had this fear of, you know, what are we going to miss from a compliance end? We've always got to make sure compliance is forefront, and we've stayed true to that. I've been involved in marketing decisions and all kinds of things. You know, I'll tell you a funny story. My first day at Hippo, I walk into the office. I'm at my desk for about 20 minutes, and one of our marketing guys comes up to us. He was a consultant named Jason. And he hands me this piece of paper about our claims experience through the TPA that we were about to start working with. And I'm looking at the whole thing, and it's a pretty design, all this stuff. But all I noticed is at the bottom in big bold print, it just says, it's covered, period. That was it. And I just sitting there looking at it as an underwriter and knowing compliance. And I'm like, please tell me you did not share this with any of our partners. And he's like, well, I shared it with 𝗪𝗵𝗁𝗲, who was our first insurance partner in California. I'm not kidding you, within 5 minutes, our underwriting rep from 𝗕𝗶𝗸𝗲 called me and was like, "What are you guys doing? This is crazy. You need to get this in line." And of course, man, it just, from then on, it was just, it's always been this big joke, but compliance has been number one. And after that initial discussion with the 𝗧𝗲, you know, I knew very quickly that he cared deeply about what we were going to build, but he was going to make sure that we did it the right way. You know, the problem you run into sometimes with venture-backed capital is they push for growth, right? Always push for growth, push for growth. It makes people do and make rash decisions. We've been very, very smart about the way we've raised capital, right? We work with partners, and we've been invested in by companies who are like-minded and have, you know, associated interests with us, right? Comcast is one of our lead investors. They have millions of customers who are invested in smart home technology through their Xfinity Home program, right? We work with Lennar Homes, which is the largest home builder in the United States, right? From the very onset of when the house is built, what can Lennar do to make sure that 25 years from now, that house isn't having claims? No different than what Ford and Chevy did when they decided to start putting, you know, rear-facing cameras in cars and started putting sensors in bumpers and all these different things, right? We migrated. So it was a scary decision when I decided to leave Esurance and join this 8-man startup in Palo Alto and pack up my family and move to one of the most expensive counties in the United States. And when I got my first paycheck and it actually showed up in my bank account that day, it was an exciting moment. I still remember my wife calling me laughing and was like, "I still had it at 50-50." And I was like, "Yeah, I did too, but it's there now." And, you know, it's been a hell of a journey since.
Okay. So talk about the insurance tech dynamic that has occurred over time. So fine. Compliance is part of it, but I'm pretty sure there are probably a lot of tech folks that are just like, but why? Well, why can't we? Why can't we? Which is, I think, is extremely healthy, right? I don't think it gets asked enough, but I think it's one of the differences in our industry versus others is that we are in a box, right? It's highly regulated. It's, you know, company after company, they don't get slapped on the wrist. When the regulator shows up, they lock the door. You can't get in. It's not like what happened to Uber or Airbnb. They lock the door. So talk about the interplay and in balancing asking why, and when you shut off why. Like you can't ask why anymore because you're just not going to get that. Like the regulators are never going to allow it, or they've already said no, or whatever. Talk about that interplay.
Yeah, so first and foremost, the why is the most important question always with us, right? That is one of the things that we've encouraged the team is always ask why, especially and more importantly than anything else from the technology side. Because in insurance, and you're an insurance guy, you understand legacy systems and everything else. A lot of the reason why we can't do a lot of the things that we want to do is because of the technology capabilities. And a lot of the reasons why the regulators come back and say you can't do something is because a lot of times it's very difficult for an insurer to make it fair for everybody, right? Because their programs don't work the same way. They're compartmentalized. So what you do in Northern California may be different than Southern California, even though it's under one product filing. You have a group of product managers that work in one region. When I was at Nationwide, I worked in southern states, right? We had an area of responsibility. I worked on a lot of projects there, but they weren't projects that overlapped into other regions. It was specific to the states that I worked in. The very first thing that we made the decision on, and we made this decision in my interview with the 𝗧𝗲, and it was one of the reasons he had connected with me originally, was our policy administration system. The 𝗧𝗲 did not want to buy an off-the-shelf solution. Yep. They had one that they were looking into, and very quickly realized that you can't do all of the things that we are now doing as Hippo on the IoT side, the partnerships that we have with smart home companies, the coverage changes and the ability to add and remove endorsements easily and quickly and calculate premiums and all these different things. You couldn't do that if you're relying on somebody else for a policy administration system. Even some of the better companies out there that build the off-the-shelf solutions, you also run into the same issues with those companies in the sense that we're this little company, Hippo, right? We're a $12 million startup in Silicon Valley. If State Farm goes to one of these companies tomorrow and says, "Hey, we're ready to upgrade our policy admin system," are they going to give me their best resources, or are they going to give State Farm their best resources, right? So no matter any way you slice it, it was a lose-lose situation. We were very lucky to have the co-founder CTO that we had at the time. Eyal is one of the most brilliant coders I've ever worked with. I mean, my first 3 months at the company, we basically sat locked in a room, me, him, and one other developer that we had. And we built a policy admin system. And we sat with the why for, I can't tell you how many days, Nick, of why can't an insurance company work with a smart home company? Why can't they integrate with this? Why, when a compliance audit comes in, do they have to be on site and it takes them 10 weeks for them to get through 100 case files for them to look at? Like, we thought about all of these different things. Moratoriums, there's a catastrophe coming. Why does it take so long for us to shut off different areas of business or communicate to our customers and send emails to let them know that they're in harm's way? So we tried to think of as many whys as we could, and we built a back-end platform that allowed us to do this, right? From a data aspect and the technology side, there's tons of great data sources out there. They're not accurate across the entire United States, right? I might find a data source that's got really good accuracy in the Bay Area, but they have terrible accuracy in Texas. But I still want to integrate with them, and I have to make it cost effective for me to use that data source across my entire program, even if I'm not, right? So then it becomes a negotiation tactic on how you set up your cost structure of how you pay for these things. But the original idea of having a cloud-based system that had, unlimited capabilities from an API perspective. I use the analogy all the time of a power strip, right? In my past lives in a legacy system, there's a power strip with 6 plugs, right? Those 6 plugs are always filled. If I ever want to plug something new in, I always have to detach something else to be able to add whatever it may be, whether it's a new data warehouse or a new underwriting system. I went here with the whole mantra of, we need a cloud-based system and it needs to have unlimited outlets. So if I need to get the same data source from 50 different data providers to make sure that I have as much accuracy as I possibly can, I can do that. And then I also have the technical know-how on the back end to aggregate those data sources so that I know when I want to use them, whether it be a confidence scoring metric or we use AI or whatever technology we use to make sure we have those things, working the correct way for the correct policies. What was the early onset. And we've morphed that now into our consumer focus and have leveraged that on the claims side. We built our own claims management tool that's built into our policy system. It's the integration point for all of our partnerships that we have on the IoT side, how we track and maintain our discounts, the level of rate sophistication that we have when we do product filings and updates, as well as our ways to work with the regulators, right? When we're going through these things and we're trying to do a product filing and understand what the impacts are, and our actuarial team do an analysis on all the different data that we have, it's helped immensely. And the second part has been the partnership side of us not being a disruptor, right? I love insurance. I've worked with regulators my entire career. We've always had a very proactive relationship with the NAIC. I still remember in Mountain View, California, our second office, there was an NAIC convention in San Francisco with all the insurance commissioners. And Angela, who was our head of compliance at the time, and Asaf came up with the idea of, like, we're going to do this open house and we're going to invite them in to see it. We're just going to open everything up, let them see the office, let them meet the teams, let them come in. And we did. And we had probably 7 or 8 regulators that showed up in this little tiny office and sat in one of our tiny little conference rooms. And we gave them a live demo of our webpage. We gave them a live demo of our policy system. And we were like, give us feedback. What do you think? What is going to get us in trouble in your state? What are the things we need to think about? And we've continued that focus, right? When we go into new states, we have calls just like a traditional carrier would have calls with regulators to understand that it's not necessarily just the regulator. I want to know their team, because their team is the one who's actually going to look at our filing and is going to make the decision based on everything else. The commissioners come and go. It's their teams that have been there for 20 or 30 years that have the knowledge and the experience that you want to get access to. And a lot of tech companies aren't going to know to go that way about it, right? They're going to think about it from pure tech. And we've always had an insurance mind in the house, and we've been here long, and we've continued to add to the team. Right now we have Nicole, who's one of the most brilliant people I've ever worked with from a risk management standpoint, and just understanding catastrophe exposure and management of rates and filings and all these different things. So as we continue to evolve, I have no doubt that we'll continue to invest in making sure that we, that we continue down that path.
So you've done some risky things. Listening to this, when it comes to policy management system, when it comes to claim systems, my guess is there's a lot of VC pressure to be like, well, if it's not adding value to what it is you're doing, if the customer doesn't realize that this is a value add, you should probably outsource that. And I think that's probably the knee jerk the default rule of thumb reaction that most companies starting this would take. And so I'm curious, like, when you heard about the policy management system, were you in line right away? Were you just like, yeah, you're going to have to build it? Or how much pushback did you provide in that, like, this is complex?
Yeah.
You can't just like show up and create a policy management system. There are, companies worth hundreds of millions of dollars that do this on a day-to-day basis. They, kind of own the industry, so to speak. And you know what companies I'm talking about. You don't just show up and build it. How straightforward was it for you to sort of agree that it needed to be done? How much did you push back on, this is risky, this could be a distraction to what it is you're trying to build?
Yeah, so great question. And I wish I could say that I take some credit for this, but I'm going to give 100% of this to Asaf and to Aviad and to Eyal when they made this decision, right? When I came in to interview with Asaf, one of the things on my resume that he had seen was the fact that I worked in the policy management system at Esurance, right? We had built our own program and whatnot way back when. So I had some experience in it. And when I came into my interview, Asaf told me candidly, like, we need to build a policy management system. And I was like, okay, I'm like, this is a pretty big lift. But I started to think about it, and he ran me through these scenarios of like, look, why has it been an issue for, Allstate to do this, or even Esurance to do this? He's like, because you have all of this legacy knowledge and everybody always wants to revert back to how things work in the past, right? We didn't have a program. We didn't have a product yet. We didn't have a single customer yet. So Asaf viewed that as, we have a clean slate. We can build something special however we want to build it. I need somebody to come in and tell us every single piece that we need to build. I can get the developers and I can get some of the best tech talent that there is in the world that's going to help us build this. I just need a mind to help map it out. And I was intrigued, right? I was super excited. I'm an insurance guy. This is a new opportunity to actually build something special. And I was getting involved, and this is where the conversation started to go. And I was like, awesome. I'm like, what's the timetable on this? He's like, we need to have the policy admin system up and running and live in April. And this is November, right? And talking about me starting in January. And I'm like, that's not possible, man. I'm like, that's just not possible. And he's like, no, it is possible. He's like, if we put the right resource into it and we map it out correctly, he's like, we can make it happen. And we just kind of morphed the conversation. And he's like, you'll make it happen. All you got to do is tell us what we need to do and we'll build it. And it just became a challenge, man. For me, it was super exciting. I was like, there's no way we're going to do this, but okay. Like, I'm like, 3 guys, they're going to build a policy admin system in, 14 weeks and have it viable and working. And don't get me wrong, right? I mean, it was a stripped down system that we went live with that has morphed, but I can tell you that Pod, which is our policy admin system, is still, the heart and lifeblood of the back end of every product and everything that we've launched. And we've gotten to that point as an organization and as a company where we've started to migrate different pieces and know that there's certain things that, I'm never going to build a specific piece of this solution better than some of the other, companies out there that have done this stuff for a long time. But we invested in it right away. We mapped it out right away. And when you work with tech guys who don't come from insurance, who've built platforms and helped launch LinkedIn and Facebook and other stuff, they don't see it as a problem that can't be solved, right? They see it as well, why didn't you think about it this way? I remember going through and one of the functionalities that we have that to me is unbelievably sophisticated, and these guys made it seem like it was a joke, was cross-term functionality and out-of-sequence endorsements on policies. And when I explained it to them of why it's been such a problem for the industry for so long, when you have rate versions and new filings and you have to do rate capping on renewals, and like, these guys look at it as a mathematical equation that can just be solved. And when you don't have to migrate millions of customers that are on all these different billing platforms or on, a contract that was approved in the golden bear age 20 years ago that's still there, like, it was easier for us to do. And that's why it's a lot harder and why a lot of the bigger incumbents now are having a go forward strategy for new business. And some of the legacy issues still with their renewal book, right, is for exactly that. But we had a clean slate. It was a challenge I was ready for, and we invested in it. And it was, at the time, I think probably the most important decision Hippo's ever made. It wasn't easy, don't get me wrong. We've had bugs, we've had issues, having to sell it to specific partners. I still remember flying to Calabasas and meeting with 𝗕𝗶𝗸𝗲 my third month with Hippo and sitting in a room with their leadership team talking about how we built our own policy admin system. And they looked at us like we were, from another planet. Like, you can't do that. It's been 3 months. There's no way you did it. And then we gave them a demo, and they gave us a bunch of test cases on policies and asked us to rate them, and the system rated them. We made changes. We did endorsements, everything calculated. They had their actuaries go back through and calculate to make sure everything worked. And, it's been there ever since, man.
Okay. Well, now I'm going to get into meat and potatoes, because what I think might be the riskiest move, the riskiest decision, simply because this particular one involves lawyers, is policy form. And you've deviated. Again, rule of thumb is you come in, and the fastest way you can come in is you can go to one of the bureaus. You can go to ISO or AAIS, license their stuff and kind of go, license their forms and go. And you've taken a different tact. And we laughed about it in the conversation with Asaf, because those forms cover pewter bowls, fur coats,
Sure.
stock certificates, like just stuff that just doesn't fit. And that was I think the first moment where it was just like, Hippo isn't just one of these digital tech companies that's coming in saying, oh, you stupid insurance people, we're going to show you how businesses really run. That was the first moment that I thought, Hippo's doing something different here. That is gutsy, because for those that are listening, it's gutsy because it's a contract. In one of the advantages, no one ever got fired for buying IBM. No one's ever going to get fired for licensing ISO forms, right? Because it's been vetted, it's been proven, it's gone through the courts. And so, they make changes where necessary, but it's gone through the courts. You're creating a new form. There had to have been lawyers that were just like, why don't you, or someone along the way, so why don't you just use an ISO form?
Yeah, so it's a great philosophical reasoning behind it, right? And I can take this back to my interview and my conversation I had with ภิad. When I met ภิad the first time, the very first thing we talked about was the 1,000 or so customer complaints that he had looked at on the Department of Insurance website, right? Mind you, Hippo was founded in 2015, right? I didn't join the company until December of 2016. So you have, this 13-month period where these guys, all they did was research on home insurance. And it's impressive the amount of knowledge these guys got in insurance for never having worked in insurance. But the focus they had on the claims experience and understanding what was always denied, right? And it never comes back to, and I've heard Asaf say this so many times in the past, was the regulators are never going to let you deny a policy for coverage when coverage was actually afforded, right? It's always that people think that they have coverage for things that they don't have coverage for.
Yep.
So I would actually say that it's not so much of how much we changed the base contract, right? We found ways to change and work with the base ISO form to remove different things from our rate plan that were just unneeded around policy fees and all those different pieces, as well as those base coverages, right? For pewter bowls and other things. And then we still used a lot of the internal language around, home electronics and whatnot. It wasn't that the language is defined that bad. It's been updated in recent years, and even our modified ISO forms that we still have access and have in our policy contract gives the definitions pretty much the same. It's just the levels of coverage that's included in the base form are increased, right? But the bigger piece was understanding what can be bolted onto that base contract where the exclusions lie around service line, equipment breakdown, water backup. These are the types of things that ultimately people have a ton of claims for, especially in California, right? When it rains and the wind blows, trees uproot pipes and different things, and they're old and were put in, many years ago. So the idea they had was, these are added coverages. We're not going to force people to take them, but we're going to quote people with them, right? If you go to myhippo.com and get a quote with Hippo, you're going to see a quote that's going to include endorsed coverages that aren't required, that are going to make your premium higher, but we're going to quote the policy with these coverages to make sure that we're at least showing you what we think you should need, right? At least at the base form. It's ultimately the customer's decision or the agent that's helping them along pick what they need. But the intent, Nick, was to make sure that the customer ultimately is covered. From a legal aspect, of course, I mean, 𝗕𝗶𝗸𝗲 came back and had all kinds of different things that they pushed back on, and we reviewed and understood, like, what are the risks? And a lot of the things that we changed weren't the risky parts of a contract, right? It's not the basis of how a claim gets paid or denied, or, if fire following happens after an earthquake. We were talking about those high frequency, low severity issues that people have, and then the coverages that are in a base form that people pay for that they're never going to use, right? And having that shift in an alignment, and then a rate plan, right, that allows us to charge premium based on perils and multiple perils, so that we can actually have a sophisticated enough rate plan to collect the premium that we think we need for the exposures that we have.
It's beautiful, honestly. So let's talk about the internal culture now. How big is Hippo now?
I want to say we're over 300 people. I can't confirm that, but I'm pretty certain we are at least very close to that number now.
Okay, so it's as Asaf said in the interview, it's a complex mix, which I think you'll find with a lot of these insurtech startups. So started out with a lot of engineers, and then you're the insurance person that comes in, and you have to build an insurance team. But there's also, it's digital, so there's always going to be an engineering team. Asaf talked about the call center and things of that nature. And so, what is the challenge? How does Hippo? How do you think you guys handle the ability of tech folks to understand insurance and insurance professionals to understand tech, trying to get that, that marriage where the intersection crosses, and there's the other side has enough empathy for the culture, the process, the mission for what it is you're trying to accomplish. And there's not that pushback just due to ignorance, just the inability for a tech person to understand insurance, and an insurance person not respecting what the tech person has to do.
Yeah, so I'll tell you an inside joke I've had with my wife is laughing that after Hippo, I'm going to be an insurance professor. We spend so much time, and you've met Nicole in the past, right? Like her and I love talking insurance. We could do this stuff all day, every day. The collaboration and the culture is what has made Hippo as successful as it is, right? Our tech guys understand insurance. Every person that starts with the company I meet with, I have a whole training curriculum of stuff that I provide on our contract. Everybody reads our rule manual. They understand our underwriting guideline. Even I won't say understand, they at least see it, right? They have to understand the framework of insurance, especially from an engineering side. The very first engineer that helped build our policy admin system is still here at Hippo. Him and I spend a lot of time talking together about how we define things. And it's funny now because we go back and we look at the way coders define insurance terms, and it's like, what the hell does this mean? And I'm like, that's not what loss ratio is. And it's like, well, no, that's what they looked up on Google. And no. So, we built out a data warehouse and had to go back through and remap everything. But from a cultural standpoint, one of the reasons I'm in Austin is partially the culture of Hippo, right? When I left California to come down to Austin, when we really started to expand this team, Rick and I spent a lot of time traveling back and forth between the two offices, and it was great for the culture for me to come down here after spending, almost 3 years in Palo Alto office with that group out there and working with the engineers, being in Austin and now working with the customer support team and on a daily basis, and our claims group and our billing operation and our sales team. So there's a lot of collaboration that takes place. Our engineers come down pre-COVID, of course, when traveling was a little bit easier. Used to come to Austin all the time, really just on a meet and greet and a learning thing. We just did one a couple of weeks ago where we had 4 or 5 members of our engineering team basically did a rotation through all the teams within our Austin office. So they spend time with claims, they spend time listening to calls and spending time with customer support, with underwriting, with our sales team, because they have to understand and see how the systems get used at the end of the day, right? And know how that impacts what they're doing on the code side. So when there's a bug and it takes them 2 weeks to fix versus 2 hours to fix, they need to understand what that impact is to the person that's on the phone with the customer saying, hey, here's why I can't do X or Y for you right now. And it's important. And Asaf has always been a huge proponent of the culture at Hippo. Our company takes care of the employees, right? From the top down, Asaf has always made sure that every person that's at Hippo, loves Hippo, enjoys working at Hippo, and that knows that Hippo cares about them and that Hippo's here to take care of them. COVID's been a great example of that. We've all come together and had to migrate home basically overnight, right? We left the office one day and didn't come back and haven't since, but we've done a lot of things from an HR standpoint to make sure that everybody's taken care of, whether it's help with schooling stuff and, work environment and all these different things has been, it's been incredible to see, and it's been, equally as incredible to be a part of.
Sort of my final question, depending on how you answer it. It's what you see. There's a lot of pressure from venture community to grow. That's not surprising. And I don't think you guys are afraid of that. The general process to do that is to go laterally, horizontally. So if you do something successful in one line, you just pick up that process and sort of bring it into the other. I think that's the biggest surprise that I had in my conversation with Asaf was when I asked him that question, he didn't bite. You guys are dedicatedly devoted towards homeowners. And so if anything, if you guys are moving laterally, it is bundling elements into the homeowners policy that aren't insurance,
Yep.
That aren't specifically about insurance, like the smart home, like the warranty. And what struck me, and this has come up in other This Week in Coverager discussions, is the whole thing of bundling and unbundling. And he was thinking of it as the unbundling. I was actually thinking of it as bundling. Like
Sure.
The warranty and the other stuff it's not insurance, but it's a different bundle, and it makes it pretty much like a different business model. Like you guys are beginning to get escape velocity and become something that's really outside of insurance, where I would say the vast majority, if not all of your competitors, are staying in the insurance sphere and just sort of transporting what they've done successfully to other lines. You guys are laser beam focused on that one line. That of course carries risks with it, but can
Sure.
you talk about, since the beginning, has that always been the case? And if it hasn't, when did it start? Like what sort of precipitated the decision making to decide this is it, that we're gonna focus on the homeowner population and we're gonna take care of them? Or as Asaf says, if they get locked out of their house, I want them to call me to let them back in.
Yeah. So day one, my very first day talking to Asaf, it's always been about home insurance. It's never ventured off of that, to my knowledge. And all the conversations I've had, we've talked about every kind of product that there is in the industry, but it's always back to homeowners as the main focus, right? This is a huge, huge growing industry. I'll give you my insurance perspective. To me, I feel like auto is going to be gone in 10 or 15 years, right? It's going to be, you buy a car and it's going to come with some sort of a policy based on, the little bit of driving that you're actually still going to be doing, right? With autonomous vehicles and everything else that's there. The catastrophe space is changing dramatically, and home insurance and commercial products are going to be what ultimately gets impacted and where insurance is heaviest. The difference being, to me, and I'm going to give you my insurance answer as quickly as I can since we're running out of time, is the focus within the industry has always been add products, right? You bundle to get auto and home together because it increases the lifespan of the policy. You're going to make money off the auto. You may sell a life policy. You're making the agent happy, all of these different things. We have a different focus, which you hit on, and I think Asaf has hit on this so many times, is you can have a much better impact on your actual loss ratio reduction instead of trying to add products to bring your total profitability to a profitable number, right? Why can't we focus on home and bring our water loss ratio from 30% down to 15%, right? When you think of the insurance profitability of your combined ratio, right? And that whole variance between being at a 98 and having an amazing year versus 102 and it not being a great year type of thing. In the homeowner space, right? You can have a profitable book if you do it the right way. And we're finding ways outside of the insurance product itself to drive down those ultimate loss ratios. And luckily for us, the investors that we've had in the VC community that Asaf has gotten us involved with, right? They understand profitability. They want to understand what loss ratio means. They want to understand us growing in specific areas. And, you know, what does SCS mean? If I said that to the board, I bet you $100 they could tell me exactly that it's severe convective storm, because we've talked to them about Texas exposure, and they actually understand our business model and are learning insurance of what we do. I mean, you can go through and look at our cap table of all the different investors that are out there that have invested in HIPPO, and you'll notice a very common theme about them having either smart home technologies, investments in smart home technologies, investments in real estate, investments in home building. So the focus there is, this is a massive, massive industry. Why do we need to focus on these other products when everybody is unbundling? And when Asaf says unbundling, I can tell you almost guaranteed that he's saying it more in the sense of products, right? Insurance products, of unbundling your home and your auto and those types of things. We are absolutely trying to bundle every home protection type product that we can to make sure that we give one experience to our customer.
Well, we'll end it there. I hope for the audience that, you know, this wasn't a HIPPO. We didn't put HIPPO on a pedestal here. It's, you know, there are trade-offs that need to be managed. There's risk, and I just thought it was just an awesome idea to sort of come in and talk about how insurance and tech relate. But I think we went deeper. It's how insurance and the whole insurance business model and tech, how they need to relate to one another. And I just very much appreciate the thoughtfulness of how you guys are doing it. It's different. It's not for everyone. And I think Asaf said that. And so there was a great story. I hope you guys have some sort of historian in place that can, you know, is taking photos and writing all of the key details down for you.
I'm one of those people, man. I got all the old office photos on my phone of every office we've ever been in. So, you know, and right back at you, Nick. Honestly, I appreciate what you and Sheffy and Avi and all the other people that are covering InsurTech have done. You know, it was great. One of the best moments in that whole entire interview you guys did with Asaf was when him and Sheffy were talking about ITC 4 years ago, when there was like 150 people there. Yeah. And last year there was 10,000 or something ridiculous, just how this industry has changed. But you guys, you know, you paint with a broad stroke and try and include everybody, which is good. You know, it shouldn't just be about the text. It shouldn't just be about the insurance. It shouldn't just be about the customer. Right? There's so many different aspects of this that are touched right now, and hitting all of them is super critical and important.
Let's just solve problems. However we do it. There's going to be a bunch of different ways. Let's do it. So awesome story. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, Nick. It's always great catching up, man.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream. My 4 little children one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color